Hi guys, and welcome back to ManchTalk. I'm your host, Carla Garrick. I gotta say, today might be one of those wild ones. I had a deal last night that I was working on until about 9 p.m. and then I was up super early this morning, got all my chores done, did some show prep, but I haven't read any of it, so it might be an adventure that we're on today. Obviously, I'm thrilled. It's my first house under contract in April. I had a sort of slow March. So it's nice to see that the market and the housing market is picking back up, and even more excited because this house is just perfect for the clients that were looking for it, and it's on the west side, which makes me extra happy to put people who are well aligned in our neighborhood, and also it's like right near Namaske on the lake. So my deal with them was, hey, if I get this house for you, can I store a kayak with you and use it to go out on the lake? I also identified for the first time a common merganser, I believe, birds. And these folks are actually big birders as well, so hopefully they can teach me a whole bunch of things. So I think it's fair to say the spring season is kicking off. In fact, I heard it might be in the 80s this weekend. So be sure to start doing your spring cleaning, open up those windows, start to get the cobwebs of our winter out, and let's start to look forward to spring. There are a few stories in the news here in New Hampshire. I'm probably going to cover the top 5 that came up. Then I want to talk a little bit about what's going on with MAHA and Bobby Kennedy and, over there in Health and Human Services, seeing a little bit of conflicting stuff online. So I asked the Grok to kind of summarize for me the top 10 things he's been working on. And then I thought we should talk a little bit about Real ID. So if you're a Granite Stater and you don't have a Real ID, i.e. if you don't have a little gold star, like a good little kitty on your ID, actually after May 7th, it's possible that you will no longer be able to fly or go to a courthouse unless you have a passport. So we can talk a little bit about the history of that and look at that. But the stories in the news this week, first of all, there was a police shooting after a high-speed chase in Dover. This took place a couple of nights ago on the 13th, and I guess a 28-year-old woman was shot by a New Hampshire State Police trooper in Dover after leading the police on a chase reaching speeds of 100 miles per hour. The incident began when she allegedly refused to stop for the police, and she now faces charges. The officer's identity is withheld pending a formal interview, and the investigation is ongoing. Now, for those of you who know me well enough, I am going to say the following. Why are the police treated differently than anyone else? They have the right to shoot and kill you. So when they do it, I think it behooves public safety and it behooves the public to immediately know who was involved, like it is for all of the rest of us. Why is there special treatment for the police? They should be held to higher standards, not lower standards than we are. And this is just something that I find incredibly frustrating. Now, should the lady have stopped? Probably. Is there maybe a good reason why she didn't? Who knows, right? We don't know what the story is, but I don't know why her name is in this blurb, but the officer who shot someone for speeding, is this really the world we want to create, guys? He is not named. Now, I'm also willing to bet everyone back home that regardless of what the facts of the matter is, our Attorney General's office will find the police blameless, because they always do. So do we have a system of accountability here in New Hampshire? No, we do not. You'll recall we also had some snow. We got a wet, heavy snowstorm that dumped. We got about 3 inches where I was. Didn't stick around that much, and honestly, I thought it was kind of nice, a little last hurrah of the winter before it went away. The other thing, I'll get into the tax because yesterday was tax day, and if you're anything like me, it's my least favorite day. And actually, my husband had a late meeting, and then he had another board meeting, and I saw the mail to the Treasury on the coffee table, and I was kind of like, does this need to be post-stamped today? So there was perhaps a 6:30 last night quick drive to Goffs Falls post office to get that stamped before the 7 p.m. deadline, which in many ways also seems ridiculous. We like to do the old paper way for all the reasons you might imagine. And then I guess the last one that I found interesting, I don't know if you guys saw this, right? So now we're kind of in a bit of a dystopian nightmare. It seems like the population of America has been dialed up pretty heavily on this sort of anti-immigrant thing, and you're starting to see deportations. I'm starting to see videos of people literally being grabbed off the street and pushed into vans. I mean, it's not a good look, guys. It is not a, hey, land of the free, home of the brave kind of look. And I'll tell you what was even a worse look, and this happened right here in New Hampshire. So there was a Venezuelan illegal immigrant, Arnau Colmenares. Okay, don't quote. Look, okay, let's just say there was a Venezuelan immigrant who was illegally in the U.S. He was at the courthouse, so it wasn't like this guy was like fleeing or running around or whatever. He was at the courthouse, and a bunch of ICE guys decided to like jump him. Okay, so in the same way that, you could, if you were going to question someone about their whereabouts, you could show up during normal business hours, ring the doorbell and ask, but a lot of times, no, they kind of like to come in New Hampshire, they're not allowed to do midnight raids, so it's, 6 in the morning or, and it's never like, hey, hi, it's like, boof, 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 boof. So in the same way with this dude, I saw the video, so 3 ICE officers tackle this guy, but while they're tackling this guy, they also tackle the poor older gentleman who literally has a cane. He looks like he's in his 70s, late 70s or 80s. He's walking with difficulty. He just happens to be in front of this guy who's illegally here. And they get so excited, they like dive this dude, they're on it, but as they do it, they knock over this poor old guy who like hops, like literally hops with such much momentum. Not one of those officers even looked up or looked over. Now, I understand you can be fixated on the job that you're supposed to be doing, but if your job involves jumping people in courthouses while knocking over old men, perhaps, just perhaps, you need to reflect about what your job is in life. All right, so those were sort of the top stories here. We can be doing better, guys. All right, let's talk a little bit about what MAHA is up to. So Make America Healthy, we had a lot of hopes and expectations here. So there is progress going on, right? But if you're anything like me, you're sort of seeing these conflicting things, which of course is the nature of politics, right? Politics is actually the art of hypocrisy. It is what I find so frustrating about it because no one is honorable. No one's side, guys, because I watch people do the exact same things when they're on either side of the aisle, whether you're the winners and you're trying to grind your enemies, or if you're the losers. It's honestly, it's ridiculous. And someone like me who spends so much time working with tools to just disseminate and to figure out things, it is actually incredibly noticeable, and maybe I will get a chart and something, come talk to you guys about this next week, how much of these stories and propaganda loops have been done before. Here's an example before I get into RFK. you'll notice on social media there are now clips that are starting to circulate from, I don't know, the Democrats in the 90s talking about anti-immigration stuff, talking about NAFTA and talking about tariffs and all these things. And now it seems like, oh, now all of those talking points from the Clinton era are now sort of the talking points of the Trump era. And I find that very, very interesting. And I'm going to see if I can find us some clips so that you guys can see it for yourselves with your own eyes. So in all of this, I've started to see a lot of dissatisfaction or skepticism or genuine cynicism because of some of the statements that are circulating that RFK is making, right? So I guess he came out and he said stuff that was perceived to be pro-vax, or that he was supporting a measles vaccine or whatever, right? So I was like, well, I haven't been paying attention to every single thing. Once these people are in office, they have to actually lead. And so there's a lot of stuff going on. And it's a tough job. So the first thing I can say is there has been about 20,000 people who have been laid off or voluntarily retired from HHS. So that has reduced the workforce from 82,000 to 62,000. And the goal of this is to hopefully eliminate some of the bureaucratic bloat we see and refocus the organization HHS, which I've mentioned before, has at least 13 or 14 departments, some of which you've never even heard of. I mean, I was invited to join one that I had never heard of. And some of these cuts are to try and help the organization or the HHS refocus on its core mission. So there's been agency restructuring. And so here are the real numbers. So the HHS has been consolidated from 28 different departments. And this is what we mean when we say government's too big, right? You didn't know there were 28 departments in HHS. Why would there be? I mean, that just sounds ridiculous on its face. So it's been reduced from 28 to 15, and it's been reduced from regional offices from 10 to 5. So the idea here, of course, is to streamline operations for more efficiency. There's also been a AHA that has been created. This is the Administration for a Healthy America. And this is a new unified entity that will actually combine a whole bunch of these other offices to improve coordination so that, there is actually a funnel so that it's not all these disparate things happening. There's going to be a focus on chronic disease and nutrition. So MAHA has prioritized reversing the chronic disease epidemic through nutrition reform, including the banning of ultra-processed foods and dyes in public schools. I know people will be like, oh, we shouldn't be banning stuff. And I'm more of the mindset of, when they sneak poison into our stuff, it's okay to take it out once we figure out that it's not good for us, including fluoride. I did see in Utah, they have now banned the use of fluoride in water. Here in New Hampshire, there are at least 3 areas, including Manchester, where they are still fluoridating the water. So that is definitely something we do need to be working on. I guess MAHA is kicking off an autism investigation. So on April 10th, he actually announced that they will identify the cause of autism by September 2025. That is going to be a really interesting one. I am of the mindset, I do think the vaccine schedule, and I do believe vaccines, the adjuvants, aluminum in your brain, all of that, some of this based on my own personal experience, has influenced something with people's brains. Is it going to be just that? Probably not. It's probably going to end up being a combination of things, environmental factors, the poisons, probably the microplastics, obviously the highly processed foods. But that should be really interesting to see by September of this year. So this is going to involve hundreds of scientists worldwide. And I think it's going to provide, hopefully, the opportunity for true healing. So here is my earnest belief. Something has gone extremely wrong with our bodies. And part of that is, I think, because government is so big, when they make the wrong decisions, the impact is colossal, and it is incredibly difficult to right a wrong that has been legalized by government. This is actually why we should be so much more careful about what bills we write and what we actually legislate. And because of what happened during COVID and through COVID mania, I think everyone who has now come out the other side probably has both a personal story of some sense of harm or hurt. Either a loved one was damaged by a vaccine or hurt by COVID. Maybe you have long COVID. Maybe you have gotten sick over and over and over and over again post-vaccination. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe you were forced to get a vaccine. Maybe you decided to take a exemption and then lost your job. Whatever the thing is, everyone who went through COVID mania has some personal story. And I think that is the entry point into healing our world, because there's so much lies around science, the science, right? And the lies that came from Fauci on down, the accountability now has to happen. So whether it's going to be through this autism lens, or whether we can actually at some stage spin up a Nuremberg 2 type trial, it doesn't even have to be state sanctioned. In fact, I think we should just do it here at Bretton Woods in New Hampshire and do it online and sort of lead by example. But mark your calendars for September 2025 to see if we can get an answer at least to this rising case of autism, which of course, if you follow the numbers, went from 1 in many thousands to 1 in 36. 1 in 36 children now have autism, and we do need to get to the bottom of that. So there have been budget cuts and program cuts. So they've cut $11 billion in local infectious disease programs. There's going to be a MAHA tour and public engagement. And there are going to be some shifts in vaccine policy. So hopefully they will start to dial down, if not entirely eliminate, the vaccine schedule. What does that mean? Doesn't mean if you want to vax your kids up the yazoo, you can do it. The rest of us are just asking for the grace that we don't have to go along with your fears and insanity. So if we can come to a place where people have the right of conscience, which is the right, it is your sacred right to say no to anything you don't want to do. And if you don't want to vaccinate your children and you are paying taxes and you want to send your kids to a public school, you should be able to do that. So hopefully Bobby will get that done. All right, in the last moments here, I wanted to mention the Real ID stuff. So what's going on there? So you guys might remember that back in, I want to say it was in 2007, because I think it was right before I moved here, our legislature here in New Hampshire actually passed a resolution that opposed Real ID. And at the time, they were saying it's going to be too expensive for us to implement this. And of course, it is a gross violation of our privacy. The federalists were like, well, you must do these things, right? And New Hampshire actually culturally has a history of being like, do we have to do it? Seatbelt laws. I mean, we're all like, wear your seatbelt if you're driving, don't be a dummy. But should it be mandated? No, it shouldn't, right? If you believe in small, limited government, then most of the things that the government is now doing should really just be left up to us. So the Real ID on May 7th, 2025, you are not going to be able to travel anymore without a Real ID. Now, here's the good news. Apparently, 63% of Granite Staters are nice, obedient kiddos, and you all have compliant IDs. I do not, but I do travel with my passport because, when you're on the road, you never know when you might need your passport. So for the 37% of you who are not currently Real ID holders, you will need to visit the DMV with a proof of your identity, your social security number, and 2 proofs of residency. So you see already, so that would be like your utility bill or your current driver's license or whatever, right? There's also a $3 fee to upgrade for the renewal. And they claim that the process is straightforward and appointments are available online. Now, I have spent some time in the DMV, and you guys let me know at carla@carlagarrick.com if it was a painless process. So there are real dangers to this Real ID. Why should we be pretty serious about it? First of all, it is a privacy invasion, right? So this is the reason they're building this database is so that they can use it. And I will tell you, and please go to my website, carlagarrick.com, to take a look. But I spent probably 2 hours this morning at 4 a.m. when I like to do my deep dives, talking to Grok about Palantir, about the other databases, about the soft technocracy that is sort of developing. And it is a fascinating read. I mean, one of the threads is literally over 7,000 words long. You're going to have to invest some time there. But it explains how these databases are all being used on a meta basis from Starlink, which Grok wouldn't tell me if it's actually analyzing metadata yet. My guess is yes, it's just not telling us. But they're basically using every single database, a company like Palantir, who has both their government contracts, but also their private sector contracts. And this stuff is kind of meshed now into a weird, soft fascism, really, because, right, it is the marrying of corporatism. It's government and big corporations are kind of coming together. So I think, sadly, this Real ID push that's being sold to you because the immigrants are coming, right, is actually part of a bigger plan that will result in some kind of global tracking system. So, I mean, even the ACLU is warning that this is going to be a national mega database ripe for government overreach or hacking. And of course, that's the other thing, too. I mean, everyone's gotten hacked now. So, you don't really have that sense of privacy. It's a privacy invasion. It's also Real ID is going to result in mission creep, right? Because it started under the Bush administration. This May 7th, 2025 date actually comes out under the Biden administration. My point being, it's all of them. It's not a left-right issue. They're making it like that to make you mad at the immigrants so they can sneak this one in, nose under the door, under the curtain, whatever the saying is. This Real ID mandate is also an unfunded mandate, and it's going to cost New Hampshire money. So back when they said no thank you in 2008, people were already talking about it being about $185 million to implement. Now, it sounds like they slowly did implement it anyway, so that kind of even falls under that mission creep title. So why should you care? Because we're losing control of our data. It is a form of government overreach. They're doing it by scaring you about other humans. It's a trick. Don't fall for it. And eventually, it will come back and bite us all in the butt. That I can guarantee you. So since it was tax day yesterday, remember about a third of all your labor all year round apparently belongs to society at large. I used to like the dudes who were like throwing tea in the bay because it was a 5% tax. 2 days ago it was the Pine Tree Riot. That was a 5% tax on a bunch of trees. I think we are maybe ripe for a little more uppityness from all of us. So I will leave you guys with this sentiment: no taxation without vexation. I will see all of you back here again next week. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about some industrial food-like products that hopefully will get banned out of our meals and our food. And for anyone looking for things coming up this week, you can follow along on X, where I do a daily MLX. That's My Living Experiment. I save all my content on my website, carlagerrick.com. You can always reach me at carla@carlagerrick.com. And there are still a handful of tickets left for Liberty Forum. That is coming up next weekend in Concord at the Grapponi. And you can find tickets for that at nhlibertyforum.com. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. I'll see you back here again next week.